Alex was an ordinary man, living a normal life in the quiet suburbs of Earth. He worked a simple desk job, had a few friends, and kept to himself. Life was peaceful, but it was also uneventful. That was until the day he received a letter that would change everything. It came in an old-fashioned envelope, with strange markings he didn't recognize. The handwriting was elegant, almost alien, and it sent a chill down his spine as he stared at it. The letter was from Captain Zoreth, an alien explorer Alex had met years ago during a mission in deep space. Zoreth had been a mentor of sorts, guiding Alex through dangerous situations when they were both stranded on a distant planet. Though they were from different worlds, a bond had formed between them. But Zoreth was no ordinary alien, he was a member of a technologically advanced species that had crossed galaxies. And now, years later, Zoreth was dead. As Alex opened the letter, his hands trembled slightly. It read, "To my dear friend, Alex. By the time you receive this, I will no longer be among the living. I know this will come as a shock to you, but I trust you will understand my decision. You are the heir to my estate, and there is something I must ask of you. I leave you something precious, someone precious. Her name is Lyra, a beautiful alien woman who has been under my care for years. She is not just any being, her power and destiny are tied to Earth. As per our ancient bond, you must protect her. There are enemies who seek her, and they will stop at nothing to capture her. I trust you will keep her safe. You may be wondering why you, of all people, are chosen for this task. But know that you are the only one who can protect her. I ask for nothing more than your care and your courage. Please, keep her safe, for the future of our worlds depends on it." The letter fell from Alex's hands as his mind raced. He couldn't believe what he was reading. Inherited something? An alien woman? Enemies after her? It all seemed too unreal. Alex had never even imagined being part of something so big. He thought back to his time with Zoreth, who had always been a mystery, and now, even in death, Zoreth had left him with an even bigger one to solve. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. It was a delivery, a large, metallic case, unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Inside was a small holographic device that flickered to life as soon as he touched it. A woman's voice echoed from the device. "Alex, I am Lyra. I know you have questions, but time is short. They will come for me soon. I am on my way to Earth." The hologram faded, and Alex was left staring at the device, speechless. This was no ordinary inheritance, it was a call to action. But what exactly was he supposed to do with an alien woman? And why was she so important? As he looked out the window, his thoughts were interrupted by a strange sound, something like a low hum, followed by a bright light in the sky. He rushed outside and saw a massive spaceship descending slowly toward Earth. It was huge, its metallic surface gleaming in the daylight. Alex's heart raced. The letter had warned him that enemies would come, but he hadn't expected them to arrive so soon. The ship hovered above the ground, casting an eerie shadow over the streets. People on the street were starting to notice, and panic was setting in. Suddenly, the sky split open with the sound of a loud crack, and several smaller ships shot out of the larger one, speeding toward the Earth. The sight was enough to make Alex's stomach drop. These weren't tourists coming to visit. These were soldiers, and they were coming to find Lyra. Alex knew he had no time to waste. He had to find her before the alien forces did. But where was she? Was she already on Earth? The thought of having to protect an alien woman with unimaginable power felt overwhelming. How was he supposed to handle this? He barely understood what was going on, let alone how to stop an alien army. But as the ships drew closer, something inside him clicked. He couldn't let fear take control. Zoreth had trusted him with this responsibility, and if there was one thing Alex had learned from their past adventures, it was that nothing was impossible if you didn't give up. He clenched his fists and made a decision. He was going to find Lyra, no matter what it took. As the sound of the ships grew louder, Alex realized this wasn't just about protecting one woman. This was about saving the future. If Zoratha's enemies succeeded, they would not only capture Lyra, they would control the galaxy. And Earth, Alex's home, would be caught in the crossfire. He had to stop them, even if it meant putting everything on the line. In the distance, the first alien ship landed, its enormous shadow casting a cold chill across the ground. Alex took a deep breath. This was just the beginning. The countdown had started. And he had no choice but to follow the path Zorath had set for him, even if he didn't fully understand it. Alex had barely taken his first step toward figuring out what was happening when the ground shook beneath his feet. The sound of powerful engines roared in the distance, growing louder by the second. The sky seemed to darken as more ships appeared, their massive forms cutting through the atmosphere like predators hunting their prey. The first one, the largest, had already touched down in the city center, and others followed, forming a tight formation in the sky. It was clear, the aliens had arrived. And they weren't here to make peace. Alex's heart raced as he looked at the glowing device in his hand. It was the only clue he had, the last message from Zorath. The alien captain had made it clear, Lyra was coming. He just didn't know when or how, but she was his responsibility now. He had to find her, protect her, and figure out why these alien invaders were so desperate to capture her. The sky above him crackled with energy, as though the very air had been charged with anticipation. Alex ran down the street, weaving through crowds of people who were beginning to panic. The fear in their eyes was evident, and he couldn't blame them. Who could have predicted an alien invasion? The glowing hologram from the device flickered again. This time, it was Lyra's face, vivid and clear. Her bright blue eyes stared back at him with an intense focus. She looked calm, but there was something in her gaze, a warning. "Alex," she said softly, "you must hurry. They are already here." Her voice was strange, soft, but filled with an authority that sent a chill through his spine. "They will stop at nothing to find me. You are the only one who can protect me now. But you must act quickly." The transmission cut out as quickly as it had begun, leaving Alex staring at the now silent device in his hand. His heart pounded as he stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do next. He had no idea where Lyra was, but he had to find her. He couldn't let her fall into the hands of these alien invaders. He rushed toward the location of the largest ship, hoping it was where Lyra would land. He needed answers, and fast. The air around him felt heavy, thick with the weight of what was happening. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it all. Why had Zorath chosen him? And who were these aliens? Why did they want Lyra so badly? As he reached the square where the alien ship had landed, the sight was overwhelming. The ship was enormous, easily the size of several city blocks, and its surface shimmered with strange patterns of light, reflecting off the surrounding buildings. Around the ship, alien soldiers in black armor stood in formation, scanning the area with strange, glowing weapons. They were heavily armed, and the tension in the air was almost unbearable. Alex ducked behind a nearby car, peeking out to observe. The aliens were methodical in their movements, as if they knew exactly what they were doing. He noticed a few of them were communicating through wrist devices that projected holographic maps into the air. They seemed to be searching for something, or someone. "Where is she?" Alex muttered to himself, his mind racing. He couldn't just stand here and wait. He had to make his move. But how? Suddenly, a new sound caught his attention. A hum, followed by the faintest flicker of light in the distance. He squinted, trying to focus on the source. The glow grew stronger, and as his heart leapt in his chest, he saw a figure moving toward him from behind the shadow of the ship. It was Lyra. She was smaller than Alex had imagined, though still tall by human standards. Her long, silver hair glowed faintly under the city lights, and her skin shimmered with a soft iridescent glow. Her eyes, bright and intense, locked with his the moment she stepped into view. "Alex," she said again, her voice softer now but still carrying an undeniable force. "You must listen to me. There is something you need to know." Before Alex could speak, the ground beneath them shook again, and the air grew even colder. More ships had arrived. They weren't waiting for anything anymore. The attack was imminent. "Listen to me," Lyra continued, urgency in her voice. "These aliens are not just invaders. They are part of a larger, darker force. They seek to dominate and control everything. Their technology is more advanced than anything Earth has ever seen. And I am the key to stopping them." Alex's mind was racing. Key to stopping them? What was she talking about? He had so many questions, but time was running out. The aliens were closing in, and their weapons were aimed in their direction. "We have to move, now," Lyra said, grabbing Alex's arm and pulling him toward the shadows. "They've found us." Alex hesitated, still unsure of everything, but he had no choice. He followed her, and as they ran, he saw the dark shapes of the alien soldiers closing in behind them. They were fast, too fast. The bright glow of their weapons illuminated the street, and Alex knew they didn't have long before the soldiers would start firing. "We'll be safe inside," Lyra said, leading him toward an alleyway. As they ran, she pulled out a small device from her pocket and activated it. A faint shimmer appeared around them, and suddenly, Alex felt a rush of wind as they were enveloped by an invisible shield. "This is a cloaking device," Lyra explained quickly. "They won't be able to see us, but we can't stay like this for long. We need to find shelter." Alex was in awe. The device worked instantly, and the world around them seemed to vanish. The sounds of the aliens searching grew distant, but Alex knew they couldn't hide forever. "We need to find somewhere safe," Lyra whispered, her face tense with worry. "The worst is yet to come. They're searching for me because they believe I have something they need. Something that will give them ultimate power." Alex looked at her, finally understanding that this wasn't just about a simple alien invasion. This was much bigger, much darker than anything he had ever imagined. And now, he was a part of it. They needed to move quickly, or everything Alex knew, and Earth, could be lost forever. Alex and Lyra hurried through the darkened streets, their footsteps echoing off the empty buildings. The cloaking device continued to shield them, making them invisible to the alien soldiers who were scouring the area. Despite the safety the device offered, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. The whole world had turned upside down in a matter of hours. One minute, he was living a normal life, and the next, he was running for his life with an alien woman who seemed to hold the key to saving Earth. The night felt colder, and the silence around them was deafening. Alex glanced at Lyra, who was leading the way. She seemed calm, focused, but there was an unmistakable tension in her posture. Her glowing eyes were constantly scanning their surroundings, never letting her guard down. "Where are we going?" Alex whispered, his breath visible in the cold air. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She looked at the sky, her expression distant, as if she were calculating something in her mind. "We need to get to a safe house," she finally said. "It's the only place where I can explain everything to you." Alex nodded, though he had no idea what she was going to say. His mind was still reeling from everything that had happened so far. He had only just learned of Zoratha's death and Lyra's arrival, and now, they were being hunted by powerful aliens with advanced technology. It didn't make sense. What was so special about Lyra? Why were they after her? As they moved deeper into the city, they passed abandoned cars and broken streetlights. The world felt deserted, as if the alien invasion had sucked the life out of everything. The few people they encountered were either hiding in their homes or running in the opposite direction, afraid of the aliens. Finally, they arrived at a hidden entrance to an underground bunker. Lyra used a small device to unlock the door, and they descended into the darkness. Inside, the atmosphere was different, safe, quiet, but tense. The walls were lined with old tech, and the air was musty, as if no one had been here for years. Lyra led Alex into a small room that looked like a command center. There were holographic screens displaying various parts of the world, showing news reports of alien ships landing in different cities. The scale of the invasion was much bigger than Alex had imagined. This wasn't just about Earth. This was a war, and humanity was on the brink of losing. Lyra took a deep breath and activated one of the screens, bringing up a map of the galaxy. "I need to tell you the truth, Alex," she said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "Everything you've been told about my people is a lie. We are not just another race of aliens. We were once part of a great alliance, a civilization that spanned galaxies. But we were betrayed. The alien forces hunting me now are the same ones who destroyed my people." Alex stared at the map, trying to process what Lyra had just said. Her people were part of a great alliance. And they were destroyed. It sounded like something out of a history book, something too big for him to understand. But the look in Lyra's eyes told him she wasn't lying. She was serious. "The invaders, the ones after me, are the remnants of that same betrayal," she continued. "They are part of a race known as the Zorati, a race of conquerors who wiped out my people and took control of everything. They believe that by capturing me, they can gain access to the power I hold, the power that could restore the balance of the universe." Alex's mind was spinning. "What power? What are you talking about?" Lyra's gaze softened as she looked at him. "I hold the key to an ancient technology, one that could defeat the Zorati once and for all. But it's not just the technology they want. They want me, because I'm the last of my kind. I'm the only one who can activate the power of the Alliance and stop them from taking over." Alex swallowed hard. This was bigger than anything he could have imagined. His role in all this was becoming clearer, but it was also terrifying. He wasn't just protecting Lyra, he was protecting humanity's future. The weight of that responsibility was crushing, but he couldn't turn back now. "What can I do?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. Lyra stepped closer to him, her eyes locking with his. "You're already doing it," she said softly. "By helping me, by keeping me safe, you're giving us a chance. But there's more we need to do. We need to find a way to stop the Zorati from reaching the technology before they destroy Earth." Alex nodded. He didn't know how, but he was in this now. He had to protect Lyra. He had to help her stop the Zorati. But he was just one man. He didn't have the skills, the knowledge, or the power to fight a war against an alien race. "You're not alone in this," Lyra said, sensing his doubt. "We have allies. There are other survivors, other races who want to help us. We just have to find them before the Zorati do." As she spoke, Alex began to feel a strange connection to her. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something deeper. Something more important. He wasn't just fighting for Earth. He was fighting for Lyra, for the Lost Alliance, and for the future of the galaxy. But the weight of their mission was already taking a toll on both of them. They knew the Zorati weren't far behind, and every passing moment brought them closer to a final confrontation. Alex felt the pressure mounting, but he also felt something else, a sense of purpose. He had a role to play in this war. He had to be strong. Not just for himself, but for Lyra, and for everyone who depended on them. With the Zorati closing in and the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, there was no turning back. Together, they would face the storm. And together, they would fight to save everything they held dear. The room was dimly lit, with the hum of machinery in the background. Alex stood at the edge of a holographic map, watching as Lyra pointed to a flashing red dot on the screen. "This is where they're going," she said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "The Zorati forces are heading straight for the main control center of the Alliance's technology. If they reach it before we do, they will unleash a weapon that could destroy not just Earth, but entire star systems. Alex's mind raced. He had known they were running out of time, but this? This was bigger than anything he had imagined. How do we stop them? He asked, trying to steady his breath. Every second counted. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned away from the map and walked over to a large metal chest in the corner of the room. Her fingers glided over the intricate locking mechanism, which clicked open with a quiet hiss. Inside, there was a glowing crystal, suspended in a protective casing. It shimmered with an otherworldly lie. This, she said, her voice heavy with meaning, is the key to everything. The Zorati believe that I can unlock the full power of the Alliance's technology. But this crystal, it holds the true power. It's the ultimate weapon, and with it, we can turn the tide of this war. Alex stepped closer, eyes wide with disbelief. What is it? Some kind of bomb? Lyra shook her head. No. It's not a weapon of destruction. It's a weapon of creation. This crystal can harness energy in ways no human or alien could imagine. It can create a force powerful enough to disrupt the Zorati's entire fleet, stopping them in their tracks. But I need to activate it. And I need to be near the control center to do that. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. This was it. The moment they had been preparing for. He looked at Lyra, who was now holding the crystal with both hands, her expression solemn. There was so much at stake. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for the future of the entire galaxy. We need to move now, Lyra said, snapping Alex out of his thoughts. The Zorati are already on their way. If we don't reach the control center first, it will be too late. Alex nodded, his mind snapping into focus. This was the kind of moment that determined whether humanity lived or died. He couldn't let fear control him. Not now. Not when everything depended on them. As they left the hidden bunker, the cool night air hit Alex's face. He felt the weight of the mission settle deeper into his chest. He was no longer just a regular man. He was a part of something bigger, something that could change the fate of humanity forever. The journey to the control center was treacherous. They moved through the city's back streets, staying out of sight as much as possible. Lyra led the way, her sharp senses guiding them through every turn. Alex followed, his eyes scanning the shadows, always on alert. They had no idea what the Zorati might have left behind, traps, spies, or worse. After what felt like hours, they reached the outskirts of the city. The control center was located beneath a large mountain, its entrance hidden by a network of underground tunnels. As they approached, Lyra stopped suddenly, her hand held up in a signal for Alex to remain quiet. Ahead, Alex saw two Zorati soldiers standing guard. Their sleek, silver armor gleamed in the low light, and their weapons were aimed in every direction. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She didn't hesitate. She motioned for Alex to follow her, and they moved swiftly, crouching low behind the cover of nearby rocks. I can take them out, Lyra whispered, her voice steady. Alex shook his head, glancing at the soldiers. He knew Lyra was skilled, but the risk was too great. If they were detected, they could lose everything. No, he said. We'll have to find another way in. We can't risk it. Lyra looked at him for a moment, and then nodded. You're right, she said, her voice low but firm. We'll move around them. Stay close. They moved like shadows, slipping through the darkness, staying out of sight. With every step, Alex felt the tension grow. The closer they got to the control center, the more dangerous it became. The Zorati would stop at nothing to keep them from reaching their goal. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they arrived at the entrance to the control center. The massive metal door stood before them, locked and reinforced. Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He looked at Lyra, who was already working on the door's control panel. I can bypass the security, Lyra said, her voice calm and focused. Just give me a moment. Alex nodded, his eyes scanning the area. Time was running out. The Zora T could be closing in, and the crystal was the only thing that could save them. He had to trust Lyra. She was their only hope. With a quiet click, the door opened, and they slipped inside. The control center was a vast, high-tech facility. The walls were lined with glowing screens, each displaying data on the Zorati's movements. At the center of the room, a large console stood, surrounded by rows of complex machinery. Lyra moved quickly to the console, her fingers flying over the controls. "This is it," she said, her voice full of determination. "I need to get the crystal into the main system. Once I do, I can activate it and stop the Zora T." Just as she stepped forward, the door behind them slammed shut with a loud bang. Alex turned, his heart racing. The Zora T were here. And they had no time left. Without warning, the room filled with a blinding light, and the ground beneath them trembled. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The control room was plunged into chaos. The bright lights flickered and hummed, casting eerie shadows across the massive room. Alex and Lyra stood frozen, eyes locked on the massive Zora T forces pouring into the facility. They had no time left to waste. Their mission had reached its final, critical moment, and everything depended on them. Lyra's fingers danced across the control panel, trying desperately to connect the crystal to the main system. Every movement she made was quick but precise, her brow furrowed in concentration. Alex watched her, feeling a sense of urgency growing within him. Time was running out, and the Zora T were closing in fast. "They're almost here." Alex shouted, his voice filled with panic. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. They didn't have much longer. "I'm almost done," Lyra replied, her voice calm but tight with tension. Her eyes flicked from the crystal to the control console, her fingers moving faster now. But just as she was about to make the final connection, the loud thud of boots echoed behind them. The door slammed open with a force that shook the room, and a group of Zora T soldiers stormed inside, weapons raised. Alex's heart raced as the room filled with the menacing glow of the Zorati's energy weapons. He could feel the heat from their blasters searing the air around them. He knew they were outnumbered, and they had no way to escape. The Zora T were going to stop them, and this could be the end. "Lyra, we can't hold them off much longer," Alex said, his voice a mix of determination and fear. He turned to face her, eyes desperate for a solution. Lyra's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, everything seemed to freeze. The two of them were locked in that moment, their fates intertwined in the balance. Alex could see the exhaustion in Lyra's eyes, the weight of their mission pressing down on her. She knew the risk. She knew that their only hope was the crystal, but getting it activated was becoming impossible. "I'll buy you time," Alex said, his voice steady even as his heart pounded in his chest. He stepped in front of Lyra, his body tensing in preparation for what was to come. "You have to finish the process. It's the only way." Lyra's eyes widened in shock. "No, Alex. You can't." "I don't have a choice," he interrupted, his voice full of resolve. "I can't let Earth fall to them. You have the power to stop this. Now go." Alex didn't give her time to argue. He reached for his weapon, which had been resting at his side. With one swift motion, he activated the high-powered blaster and stepped forward, taking aim at the advancing Zora T soldiers. He fired with precision, the energy beams cutting through the air and striking the enemy. The soldiers ducked behind cover, momentarily halted by the surprise attack. Alex didn't hesitate. He kept firing, taking out soldier after soldier. But he knew it wouldn't be enough. They were too many, and he was running out of time. He had to keep them distracted long enough for Lyra to finish. Lyra's hands flew over the controls, her mind racing. The Zora T were closing in, and she knew the crystal was the key. If she could activate it, they might still have a chance. But Alex's sacrifice filled her heart with fear and grief. She couldn't lose him. She couldn't. Tears welled up in Lyra's eyes as she forced herself to focus. She had to do this, for him, for Earth, for everything they had fought for. With a final push, she connected the crystal to the main system. The room was filled with a blinding light as the energy from the crystal surged into the control center. Outside, the Zorati soldiers flinched, as if something had disturbed their very being. The temperature in the room spiked, and the walls began to hum with a low, resonant vibration. Lyra's hands trembled as she typed in the final command. "It's done," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Just as she finished, Alex turned to face her. His body was bloodied, his breath shallow, but his eyes shone with fierce determination. He had fought like a warrior, holding off the Zorati long enough for the crystal to do its work. His body shook with exhaustion, but the look on his face was one of relief. The crystal in the center of the room suddenly flared to life. Energy waves rippled outward, expanding rapidly, and the Zorati soldiers were thrown back by the force. Alex watched as the glowing lights surrounded the invaders, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. Then, the Zorati fleet outside the facility began to disintegrate. One by one, their ships were torn apart by the energy from the crystal. The once mighty war machines crumbled like paper in the face of the unstoppable power the crystal had unleashed. The Zorati were no longer the threat they had once been. Earth had won. But the cost had been high. Alex collapsed to his knees, his energy spent, his strength fading. He looked over at Lyra, his face a mixture of pride and exhaustion. She rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. She pulled him into her arms, holding him tightly. "You did it, Alex," Lyra whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved us. You saved everything." Alex smiled weakly, his eyes filled with a quiet satisfaction. He had given everything for the fight, and in the end, it had been worth it. He had done what he had set out to do. He had protected Earth, protected Lyra, and ensured that the future would be different. The room around them was a silent testament to their victory. The Zorati were defeated, and Earth had triumphed. But the real victory was in the bond between Alex and Lyra, a bond forged through sacrifice, determination, and love. As the sun began to rise, casting a warm light over the battle-torn city, Alex and Lyra knew that their journey wasn't over. They had won, but the war had taken everything from them. Now, they would rebuild. Together, the world had changed. The sun rose over Earth, casting its warm, golden rays across the landscape, a symbol of hope after the darkness that had threatened to swallow it whole. The skies, once filled with the ominous ships of the Zorati, were now clear, free from the looming shadow of their invasion. But for those who had lived through the chaos, the weight of the battle still hung heavy in the air. Earth had triumphed, but at what cost? Alex and Lyra stood side by side, looking out over the horizon. They were both silent, lost in their thoughts. The battle was over, the war was won, but the price had been high. Thousands had died. Cities lay in ruins. And Alex, though victorious, could feel the toll the fight had taken on him. He could still remember the chaos of that final battle. The blinding lights from the crystal, the power that had surged through the room, the destruction that had followed. But the victory felt hollow. Earth had won, but the scars of war would remain for a long time. Lyra turned to him, her expression soft but filled with determination. "We did it, Alex," she said, her voice steady, though a hint of sadness lingered. "The Zorati are gone. The war is over. Humanity has won." Alex nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Yes, but it's not just about winning, is it? It's about what comes next. The Zorati were a threat, but the destruction they've caused, it'll take years, maybe decades, for Earth to recover." Lyra stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm. We will rebuild. We have to. Humanity is strong, Alex. We've seen that. We've fought against the odds, and we've survived. We will rise from this. Alex looked at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and grief. I hope you're right, Lyra. But it's going to take more than just hope. It's going to take hard work, sacrifice, and time. The people who died, their families, their homes, they need to know that their sacrifice meant something. He paused, taking a deep breath. We need to honor them. We need to rebuild not just the cities, but the very spirit of humanity. We can't let this war define us, Lyra. We can't let it break us. Lyra nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She knew what they had accomplished, but she also understood the deep scars the war had left behind. It wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about healing the wounds, about bringing people together in the aftermath of destruction. Then we will, she said, her voice resolute. Together, we will heal. Together, we will rebuild. And we will honor those who gave their lives for this victory. The two of them stood there, side by side, the weight of their words hanging in the air. For a moment, they were quiet, letting the peace of the morning wash over them. The world was still, the only sounds the gentle rustling of the wind and the soft chirping of birds in the distance. The battle was over, and Earth had survived. But the work was far from over. There was much to be done, and Alex and Lyra knew they couldn't do it alone. They needed the help of the people who had fought alongside them, the soldiers, the survivors, the leaders. They needed to rebuild not just the physical world, but the trust, the unity, and the hope that had been shattered during the war. As the days passed, the true scale of the task became clear. The cities that had been devastated needed to be rebuilt. The families who had lost loved ones needed comfort and support. The governments of Earth, once divided by petty politics and greed, now had to come together to form a unified front. Alex and Lyra traveled across the planet, meeting with leaders, offering their help and guidance, and encouraging people to unite. The journey was long and exhausting, but they knew it was necessary. They couldn't just sit back and watch Earth rebuild itself, they had to lead the way. They had to be the examples of what humanity could achieve, and it worked together. Everywhere they went, they saw the same thing, hope. Despite the destruction, the loss, and the pain, people were eager to rebuild. They were determined to create a future that honored the sacrifices of those who had fallen, and to ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. There were struggles along the way, of course, there always are, but with each passing day, they saw the world coming back to life. The skies were clearer. The cities slowly began to rise from the ashes. The people, once broken and afraid, started to heal. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but it was happening. And through it all, Alex and Lyra stood together, their bond stronger than ever. They had been through hell and back, and now they were ready to face whatever the future held. Together, they were unstoppable. As the months passed, Earth began to flourish once again. The people of Earth had learned valuable lessons from the war, the importance of unity, of working together for the common good, and of never underestimating the strength of the human spirit. They knew that the universe was vast and full of unknown dangers, but they were no longer afraid. They had faced an impossible enemy and come out on top. They had proven to themselves and to the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with. Alex and Lyra stood on a balcony, watching the sunset together. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a beautiful end to a new day. The world was still, but there was a sense of peace, a peace that had been earned through sacrifice, through courage, and through the unbreakable will of humanity. We did it, Alex said quietly, his voice filled with both relief and pride. We gave Earth a second chance. Lyra smiled, her eyes full of warmth. Yes, we did. And we will continue to protect it. Together. The future of Earth was uncertain, but one thing was clear, humanity had proven its strength. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. And now, with a new dawn rising over the world, they were ready to build a future that was brighter, stronger, and more united than ever before. Together, they would face whatever challenges the future held.